The fluorescent lights hummed their usual midnight song as Marcus Chen pushed his cleaning cart down the third-floor corridor of Fort Meade's administrative wing. 23 years old, wearing the same navy blue maintenance uniform he'd worn for the past 18 months, he moved through the building like a shadow, present but unnoticed, essential but invisible. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday in late October, and the building should have been empty. The day shift officers had cleared out hours ago, leaving behind coffee-stained desks and trash bins full of classified document shreds. Marcus preferred the night shift. The silence gave him space to think, to remember a life that felt increasingly distant with each passing month. He was emptying a recycling bin near the conference room when he heard it, a sharp, metallic clatter echoing from somewhere down the hallway, followed by what might have been a gasp or a strangled breath. Marcus froze, his hands still gripping the edge of the bin. The sound came again, clearer this time, a thud, heavy, wrong. His training kicked in before his mind could catch up. He dropped the bin and ran. The door to conference room C was slightly ajar, light spilling into the darkened hallway. Marcus pushed through and stopped cold. A woman in a dress uniform lay collapsed on the polished floor, her body rigid, arms locked at unnatural angles. Her face was twisted in a grimace of pain, eyes squeezed shut, breath coming in shallow, desperate gasps. But it was the uniform that made his heart stop. 4 stars gleamed on each shoulder, ribbons covered her chest in neat rows, purple hearts, bronze stars, medals Marcus recognized from a lifetime ago. This wasn't just any officer. This was General Victoria Hartwell, the newly appointed commander of the Defense Intelligence Agency, whose face had been plastered across every military publication for the past 3 months. Marcus dropped to his knees beside her, his mind racing through possibilities: heart attack, stroke, seizure. But then he saw her hands. Her fingers were moving, not randomly, not trembling, but forming deliberate shapes. Slow, agonized, but unmistakable. American Sign Language. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. His mother had been deaf. He'd grown up signing before he could speak, translating for her at parent-teacher conferences and doctor's appointments, moving between 2 worlds, the hearing one and hers. After she died when he was 16, he'd kept signing, kept that connection alive even when there was no one left to sign to. The general's hands formed words through visible pain: help, can't, breathe, anaphylaxis, anaphylaxis, severe allergic reaction, minutes to live, maybe less. Marcus's eyes swept the room and found it, an EpiPen lying on the table beside an open leather briefcase just out of her reach. She must have known what was happening, tried to get to it, collapsed before she could inject herself. He lunged for the pen, twisted off the safety cap, and pressed it hard against her outer thigh through the uniform fabric. The spring-loaded needle deployed with a sharp click. He held it there, counting. 1 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, exactly as he'd been taught in the basic first aid course the Army had given him years ago. The general's body jerked. Her eyes flew open, wild and unfocused, chest heaving as the epinephrine flooded her system. Marcus kept his hand steady on her shoulder, his voice low and calm. "You're okay. The medication is working. I need you to stay still. Can you breathe?" She nodded weakly, her hands still moving in signs. "Thank you. Stay." "I'm not going anywhere," Marcus said, pulling out his phone to dial 911. "Medics are coming." Her hand shot out, gripping his wrist with surprising strength. Her eyes locked onto his, sharp despite the trauma, and her fingers formed rapid, urgent signs. "No ambulance. Base medical. Classified briefing. Can't leave." Marcus stared at her. She'd just nearly died, and her first concern was a briefing. General, you need a hospital. Her fingers moved again, slower now, but insistent. Enemies watching. Weakness is danger. Base medical only, please. Something in her expression, the desperate pride, the fear beneath the command, made Marcus understand. This woman lived in a world where vulnerability could be weaponized, where showing weakness might cost more than her life. It might cost her career, her authority, the respect she'd fought decades to earn. Marcus made a decision that would change everything. Okay, he said quietly. Base medical, but we're going now. He helped her sit up, supporting her weight as the epinephrine worked through her system. Her breathing was stronger now, color returning to her face, but she was still trembling. Marcus guided her arm over his shoulder and stood, bearing most of her weight as they moved toward the door. The hallway was still empty, the building silent except for the hum of heating vents. Marcus, half carried, half guided the general toward the back stairwell, the service route he used every night, the one without security cameras or prying eyes. His cart sat abandoned near the recycling bin, evidence of a cleaning schedule interrupted. Stairs or elevator? He asked. She pointed down. Stairs, fewer witnesses. They descended slowly, Marcus's hand steady on her back, her fingers occasionally gripping the railing for balance. At the ground floor, he paused. My car is in the west lot. Base medical is 3 minutes away. Can you make it? She nodded, then her hands moved again. Who are you? Marcus Chen, night maintenance. Her eyes searched his face, a question forming. You know ASL? My mother was deaf. I grew up signing. Something shifted in her expression. Not gratitude exactly, but recognition. She signed slowly, You saved my life. You're not saved yet, Marcus said, pushing open the exterior door. Let's get you to the doctors first. Cold October air hit them as they crossed the parking lot. Marcus's 12-year-old Honda sat under a flickering light, paint faded, passenger mirror held on with duct tape. The general didn't comment. She let him help her into the passenger seat, her movements more controlled now, but still careful. Marcus slid behind the wheel and started the engine. As he pulled out of the lot, he glanced at her. She sat rigid in the seat, hands pressed to her thighs, staring straight ahead. The 4 stars on her shoulders caught the streetlights as they passed, glinting like accusations. What caused the reaction? Marcus asked, keeping his voice neutral. She didn't answer immediately. When she did, her fingers moved in signs rather than words. Latex, cleaning supplies. Someone used the wrong ones. Marcus felt his stomach drop. The conference room. He'd cleaned it earlier that week, but he'd used the standard non-latex products the military required. Someone else must have come through after him. Maybe a day shift worker who didn't know or didn't care. The base medical facility appeared ahead. A low brick building with bright emergency lights. Marcus pulled up to the entrance and killed the engine. Before he could get out, the general's hand caught his arm. Her fingers moved urgently. Don't tell them how you found me. Say I called you. Say I was conscious. Please. Marcus met her eyes. Why? Because a 4-star general who collapses alone can be explained. A 4-star general who gets saved by a janitor becomes a headline. And headlines breed questions I can't afford. Marcus understood. He'd been invisible long enough to know how visibility could destroy you. I'll say you called me, he agreed. But the doctors need to know about the epinephrine and the reaction timing. She nodded, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. Marcus got out, walked around, and helped her to her feet. Together they moved through the automatic doors into the harsh, white light of the emergency room. The on-duty nurse looked up, her eyes widening when she saw the uniform and the stars. She shot to her feet. General Hartwell. Anaphylactic reaction, the general said, her voice hoarse but steady. This soldier assisted me. I need Dr. Morrison immediately. The nurse didn't ask questions. She grabbed a wheelchair and helped the general sit, then disappeared down a hallway calling for the doctor. Marcus stood in the waiting area, hands in his pockets, suddenly aware of how out of place he looked. Maintenance uniform, grease-stained boots, standing in a space designed for officers and emergencies. A doctor appeared, mid-50s with silver hair and quick, efficient movements. He took one look at the general and nodded. "General, I'm Dr. Morrison. Let's get you into an exam room." As they wheeled her away, the general looked back at Marcus. Her hand lifted briefly, fingers forming a single sign. Stay. So Marcus stayed. He sat in an orange plastic chair that squeaked when he shifted his weight. The clock on the wall read 12:23 a.m. His shift supervisor would be wondering where he was. His cart was still sitting abandoned on the third floor. The recycling bin was still overturned. But a four-star general had asked him to stay, and some instincts ran deeper than fear of being written up. 40 minutes passed. A nurse brought him terrible coffee in a foam cup. Marcus drank it anyway, the bitter taste grounding him in the surreal moment. Around him, the emergency room stayed quiet. A soldier with a sprained ankle, a contractor with a cut hand, the usual midnight injuries of a military base at peacetime. Then Dr. Morrison appeared in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Chen, the general would like to see you." Marcus followed him down a narrow corridor to a private room. The general sat on the edge of an exam bed, still in her uniform but with an IV line trailing from her arm. Her face was drawn but alert, the sharp intelligence in her eyes undimmed. Dr. Morrison closed the door behind Marcus, then turned to him with a look that was part curiosity, part assessment. "The general tells me you administered the epinephrine," the doctor said. "That saved her life. If she'd gone another 3 minutes without it, we'd be having a very different conversation." Marcus nodded, unsure what to say. "Thank you," Dr. Morrison continued. "Not many people would have known what to do." "Basic first aid training," Marcus said quietly. "Anyone would have done the same." The doctor smiled faintly. "We both know that's not true." He glanced at the general, received some unspoken signal, and nodded. "I'll give you both a moment." He left, pulling the door closed behind him. The general looked at Marcus for a long moment. Then her hands moved. "Sit." Marcus pulled a chair closer and sat. The distance between them felt charged, heavy with unspoken things, rank, class, circumstance, gratitude. "I owe you my life," the general said aloud, her voice still rough but stronger. "That's not a debt I take lightly." "You don't owe me anything," Marcus replied. "I did what anyone should do." She almost smiled. "Most people freeze. Most people assume someone else will act. You didn't." Marcus looked down at his hands. "My mother taught me that being invisible means you see things others miss. And when you see someone who needs help, you don't wait for permission." The general leaned forward slightly. "Your mother, she was deaf?" "Yes, ma'am. She passed away when I was 16. "How long did you serve?" The question caught Marcus off guard. 3 years, Army infantry, honorable discharge. "Why maintenance work?" Marcus hesitated. The answer was complicated. Medical debt from his mother's final illness, a disabled younger sister who needed care, student loans from a college degree he'd never finished, and the reality that even honorable discharges didn't guarantee opportunities. "It pays the bills," he said finally, "and it's honest work." The general studied him with an intensity that made Marcus feel exposed. "What if I told you I could offer you something more? Something that uses your skills, all of them?" "Ma'am?" Her hands moved as she spoke, emphasizing her words. "I need an assistant, someone who understands discretion, someone who knows ASL, Someone who doesn't see rank first and person second. She paused. Someone who acts when others freeze. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. General, I'm a janitor. You're a veteran with first aid training, fluent in ASL, and capable of making life or death decisions under pressure. That's not a janitor, that's an asset. I don't have the clearance. Clearances can be arranged. She leaned back, wincing slightly. I'm not offering this lightly, Mr. Chen. Tonight you saw me vulnerable. You respected that vulnerability instead of exploiting it. That kind of character can't be taught. Marcus sat in silence, his mind racing. This couldn't be real. People like him didn't get offers like this. People like him cleaned the floors that people like her walked on, and that was the natural order of things. Except tonight, that order had shifted. Tonight, he'd breathed life back into someone the world considered untouchable, and now she was offering him something he'd stopped letting himself dream about, a chance to be more than invisible. Why me? He asked quietly. The general's hands moved, and this time Marcus saw something beneath the authority, genuine respect. Because you saw me as a person first, and in my position, that's rarer than you know. Before Marcus could respond, the door opened. A stern-faced officer in Army intelligence insignia stepped in, his eyes immediately fixing on Marcus with undisguised suspicion. General Hartwell, I came as soon as I heard. Are you? He stopped, taking in the scene. Who is this? The general's expression shifted, hardening into command. This is Marcus Chen. He assisted me tonight. He's cleared. The officer's jaw tightened. Ma'am, with respect, I need to understand exactly what happened. And you will. Tomorrow during regular business hours. Right now, I need rest, and Mr. Chen needs to return to his duties. The officer looked like he wanted to argue, but something in the general's tone made him nod stiffly. Yes, ma'am, I'll arrange increased security for your quarters. Not necessary. Ma'am, if there was an incident, it was an allergic reaction, Colonel Barrett, not an assassination attempt. Don't turn this into something it isn't. Colonel Barrett's eyes flicked to Marcus again, lingering with clear mistrust, before he stepped back. As you wish, General, but I'll need a full report. And you'll have one. She dismissed him with a glance, and he left, though Marcus could feel the weight of his suspicion trailing behind him. When the door closed, the general sighed. That's Colonel Nathan Barrett, my chief of staff. Good officer, but he sees threats in every shadow. He doesn't trust me, Marcus observed. He doesn't trust anyone. She shifted on the bed, the IV line catching the light. But I do, and that's what matters. Marcus stood slowly. General, I appreciate the offer, but I need time to think. She nodded. 24 hours. After that, I'll assume your answer is no, and we'll never speak of this again. Fair? Fair. As Marcus turned to leave, her hand moved one more time. Thank you, Marcus, for seeing me. Marcus signed back, the gesture automatic after years of disuse. Thank you for letting me. He walked out of the medical facility into the cold October night, his mind spinning. Somewhere above him, stars pierced the darkness, indifferent to the small collisions of human lives below. Marcus Chen, invisible janitor, had saved a 4-star general's life. And now, impossibly, she was offering him a way back into the world he thought he'd left behind forever. He got into his car, started the engine, and sat for a long moment with his hands on the wheel. His phone buzzed. 3 missed calls from his shift supervisor, 2 text messages asking where he was. Marcus would have to explain, would have to face questions he didn't have good answers for. But as he pulled out of the parking lot and headed back toward the administrative building to retrieve his abandoned cart, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in years: hope, and the terrifying, exhilarating possibility that his life was about to change in ways he couldn't yet imagine. Marcus made it back to the administrative building at 1:15 a.m. His cart sat exactly where he'd left it, the recycling bin still tipped on its side, its contents scattered across the polished floor. Under the fluorescent lights, the scene looked like evidence of abandonment, of someone who'd walked away from their job mid-shift. His supervisor, Dale Hutchinson, stood beside the cart with his arms crossed, a man in his 50s with a permanent scowl and a clipboard that seemed fused to his hand. Dale had never liked Marcus. "Too quiet," he'd said once. "Makes me wonder what you're thinking." "Chen," Dale's voice echoed down the empty hallway. "You want to explain why your cart's been sitting here for over an hour?" Marcus picked up the recycling bin and began collecting the scattered papers. "Medical emergency. I helped someone get to the base clinic." "Medical emergency." Dale repeated the word slowly, like he was tasting something sour. "You a doctor now?" "No, sir, just first aid." "First aid." Dale consulted his clipboard, a gesture Marcus recognized as performance rather than necessity. "Says here your assigned area is floors 1 through 3, administrative wing. Says nothing about medical response." Marcus continued working, his hands moving methodically. "Someone needed help. I helped them." "And it didn't occur to you to call actual medical personnel? Security? Anyone whose actual job is emergencies?" Marcus looked up, meeting Dale's eyes. "The person asked me to help them to the clinic directly, so I did." Dale stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I've been doing this job for 23 years, Chen. Know what I've learned? People like us, we stay in our lane. We don't play hero, we don't get involved, because when people like us step outside our lane, we get crushed." "Noted," Marcus said quietly. "You're on notice," Dale continued. "One more unexplained absence, one more abandoned cart, and you're done. I don't care if the president himself needs a Band-Aid. Your job is to clean, not to save lives. Understand?" "Yes, sir." Dale stalked off, his boots clicking against the tile. Marcus finished collecting the papers, righted his cart, and resumed his route. But his hands trembled slightly as he pushed the mop across the floor, and his mind kept circling back to the general's offer. 24 hours to decide. What was there to decide? He had a steady job, a paycheck that barely covered rent and his sister Emma's medical expenses. He had routines, predictability, invisibility. Taking the general's offer meant stepping back into a world that had chewed him up once already and spit him out with nothing to show for it but debt and exhaustion. And yet, the memory of the general's hands forming signs, the recognition in her eyes when she realized he understood, that had awakened something Marcus thought he'd buried years ago. The feeling of being seen, of mattering. He finished his shift at 6 a.m., clocked out, and drove home through morning traffic. His apartment was in a complex 20 minutes from base, a second-floor unit with thin walls and a kitchen window that overlooked the parking lot. But it was clean, affordable, and most importantly, it was close to Emma's care facility. Marcus unlocked the door and found Emma already awake, sitting in her wheelchair by the window. At 19, she had their mother's eyes and their father's stubborn chin. Cerebral palsy had shaped her life from birth, limiting her mobility but leaving her mind sharp and her spirit unbreakable. "You're late," Emma signed, her fingers moving with practiced efficiency. "Long night," Marcus signed back, dropping his keys on the counter. "Bad long or good long?" Marcus paused. "How did you explain that you'd saved a 4-star general's life and been offered a job that might change everything, but also might blow up in your face?" "Complicated long," he signed finally. Emma wheeled closer, studying his face with the intensity that made her such a good listener. "Tell me." So he did. He told her about finding the general collapsed, about the ASL communication, about the medical emergency and the offer. He left out the parts about Dale's warning and Colonel Barrett's suspicion, but Emma read between the signs. "You're scared," she signed when he finished. "I'm practical," Marcus corrected. "Same thing, different words." Emma's fingers moved with gentle precision. "Marcus, you've been invisible for 3 years. You've worked yourself to exhaustion taking care of me, paying Mom's old medical bills, trying to be responsible. When was the last time you did something for yourself?" "Taking care of you isn't a burden, Em." "I didn't say it was, but it can't be your only reason for existing." She rolled closer and took his hand. "What does your gut say?" Marcus looked at his sister, brilliant, observant, trapped in a body that wouldn't cooperate, but possessed of a mind that saw everything clearly. What would their mother have said? She'd raised them to believe that opportunities were precious, that when someone extended a hand, you didn't slap it away out of fear. "My gut says it's too good to be true," Marcus admitted. "Maybe," Emma signed. "Or maybe you deserve something good for once. Ever consider that?" Before Marcus could answer, his phone buzzed. An unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Mr. Chen?" A woman's voice, crisp and professional. "This is Lieutenant Sarah Park, General Hartwell's aide. The General has requested a meeting with you today at 1400 hours. Her office, 3rd floor of the DIA headquarters building. Can you confirm?" Marcus glanced at Emma, who was watching him with barely contained excitement. "I'll be there," Marcus said. "Excellent. Gate security will have your name. Civilian attire is appropriate." A pause. "And Mr. Chen, the General wanted me to tell you, no pressure. This is just a conversation." The call ended. Marcus set down the phone and found Emma grinning at him. "You're going," she signed. "I'm going," Marcus agreed. "Good. Now get some sleep. You look like death." Marcus managed 6 hours of restless sleep before the alarm dragged him back to consciousness. He showered, dressed in the only decent clothes he owned, khakis and a button-down shirt his mother had bought him for a job interview years ago, and arrived at DIA headquarters with 20 minutes to spare. The building was imposing, all concrete and glass, and the kind of security that made you feel watched even when you couldn't see the cameras. Marcus gave his name at the gate, received a visitor's badge, and was escorted inside by a young airman who didn't make conversation. The elevator ride to the 3rd floor felt endless. When the doors opened, Marcus stepped into a reception area that screamed power, polished wood, muted lighting, administrative staff who moved with the quiet efficiency of people who worked in the shadow of authority. Lieutenant Park appeared immediately, mid-30s Korean-American with an expression that revealed nothing. "Mr. Chen, right this way." She led him down a hallway lined with photographs of previous DIA commanders, all stern-faced men in uniform staring down from the walls like judges. At the end of the hall, a heavy wooden door stood partially open. Lieutenant Park knocked once, then pushed the door wide. "General, Mr. Chen is here." "Thank you, Sarah. Hold my calls." Marcus stepped inside, and the door closed behind him with a soft click. General Victoria Hartwell stood behind a massive oak desk, reviewing a document. She wore her dress uniform, every ribbon and medal perfectly aligned, her posture rigid with authority. But when she looked up and saw Marcus, something in her expression softened. "Mr. Chen, thank you for coming." She gestured to a chair across from her desk. "Please, sit." Marcus sat, acutely aware of how out of place he felt. The general's office was immaculate. Maps on the walls, commendations, photographs with presidents and foreign dignitaries. This was the office of someone who'd spent decades earning respect, building a career that most people could only dream about. The general sat down across from him and folded her hands on the desk. For a moment she simply looked at him, and Marcus felt the weight of her assessment. "How are you feeling?" Marcus asked, the question escaping before he could stop it. A faint smile touched her lips. "Better. Thanks to you." She paused. "I'm told my chief of staff is investigating last night's incident. I want you to know, you're not in any trouble. Barrett is thorough, sometimes to a fault, but he answers to me." "I figured as much," Marcus said. "I also want to apologize. You shouldn't have been questioned like a suspect when you were the one who helped me. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one." "It's fine, General. I understand operational security." She studied him again, and Marcus had the unsettling feeling that she was reading far more than he intended to reveal. "I've reviewed your service record," she said quietly. 3 years, Army infantry, 2 deployments, honorable discharge, spotless record. Marcus said nothing. "I also reviewed what came after: medical debt from your mother's illness, student loans from an engineering degree you didn't finish, a younger sister with significant care needs." She leaned forward slightly. "You're supporting her on a maintenance worker's salary." "She's my sister," Marcus said simply, "and your mother was deaf from birth. You learned ASL before you could write your own name." The general's hands moved, signing as she spoke. "That's not common." "Neither is having a deaf mother who refused to let the world tell her she was less than whole," Marcus signed back. Something shifted in the general's expression: recognition, respect. "My daughter is deaf," she said quietly. "Born profoundly deaf. She's 6 now." Marcus felt his breath catch. "I didn't know." "Most people don't. It's not in my official biography." The general's hands moved again, slower now, more personal. "I learned to sign for her, but I'm not fluent, not the way you are. And in my position, I meet with foreign dignitaries, military leaders, intelligence officers, many of whom don't speak English as a first language. Having someone who can communicate across multiple barriers would be invaluable." "You want me as a translator?" "I want you as an aide, someone I can trust in rooms where trust is rare, someone who understands discretion, who knows when to act and when to observe." She paused. "Someone who sees people, not just rank." Marcus looked down at his hands. "General, I'm not qualified for this. I don't have intelligence training. I don't have the right background." "You saved my life with 30 seconds of assessment and 0 hesitation. That's the kind of judgment I need." She pulled a folder from her desk and slid it across to him. "This is a preliminary security clearance packet. If you agree, we'll start the full vetting process. It'll take 6 to 8 weeks. During that time, you would work as a provisional aide, administrative duties, nothing classified, but enough to see if this is something you want." Marcus opened the folder, scanning pages of forms and legal language. His mind spun with possibilities and dangers. This could change everything. For him, for Emma, for the future he'd stopped believing in. "What happens if I say no?" he asked. "Then you go back to your life and we never speak of this again. No repercussions, no judgment." The general's voice was steady. "But I hope you'll say yes." "Why?" The question came out more vulnerable than Marcus intended. "Why me, really? You could have anyone." The general stood and walked to the window, looking out over the base. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight that went beyond rank. "When I was a lieutenant, fresh out of the academy, I was assigned to a unit where I was the only woman. The men didn't want me there, made that clear in 100 small ways, ignored me in meetings, excluded me from decisions, treated every mistake like proof I didn't belong." She turned to face him. "There was one sergeant, though. He was older, had been enlisted for 15 years, and he treated me like a soldier. Not a woman trying to be a soldier, just a soldier. She walked back to her desk. That sergeant taught me something crucial. Respect isn't about rank or gender or background. It's about recognizing competence and character when you see it. Last night, you could have called for help and walked away. You could have done the minimum. But you didn't. You saw someone in crisis and acted. That's character. Marcus felt something loosen in his chest, a tension he'd been carrying so long he'd forgotten what it felt like without it. "I need 24 hours, he said. The general nodded. "That's what I promised you. Take the folder, read it, think it over. If you decide yes, call Lieutenant Park. If you decide no, return the folder through base mail. Either way, no hard feelings." Marcus stood, tucking the folder under his arm. As he reached the door, the general's voice stopped him. "Mr. Chen, I know what it's like to feel invisible, to work twice as hard for half the recognition, to be judged by your worst moments instead of your best." She met his eyes. "You deserve more than that. Don't let anyone, including yourself, convince you otherwise." Marcus left the office, with those words echoing in his mind. As he walked through the headquarters building, past officers and analysts and people whose jobs came with clear purpose and defined value, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. He felt seen. That evening, Marcus returned to the apartment to find Emma hosting her weekly virtual book club. 6 friends with disabilities from across the country gathered on a video call to discuss whatever novel they'd chosen that month. He waved hello through the screen and retreated to the kitchen to start dinner. As he chopped vegetables, his mind kept circling back to the general's words. The folder sat on the counter, thick with possibility and risk. Marcus had spent 3 years building a safe, small life. Saying yes meant dismantling that safety. It meant trusting that the world wouldn't crush him again. But it also meant Emma might not have to choose between physical therapy and groceries. It meant he might stop waking up at 3 a.m., calculating which bills to pay first. It meant mattering in ways that went beyond mopping floors that gleamed like mirrors. Emma wheeled into the kitchen after her call ended, her face flushed, with laughter. "Rebecca says hello. She's reading that thriller you recommended." Marcus smiled. "Tell her the ending is wild." Emma rolled closer and tapped the folder. "Have you decided?" "Not yet." "Liar, you decided the moment she offered." Emma's hands moved with gentle insistence. "You're just scared to admit you want it." Marcus set down the knife and turned to face his sister. "What if I'm not good enough? What if I mess up and embarrass her? What if you're amazing at it?" Emma interrupted. "What if this is exactly what you're supposed to be doing? What if Mom was right and good things happen to people who show up?" Marcus felt his throat tighten. Their mother had said that constantly. Show up, do your best, trust the rest. She'd lived that philosophy until the day she died, working 2 jobs to give them opportunities she'd never had. "I miss her," Marcus signed. "Me too," Emma signed back. "But she'd kick your butt if she knew you were turning down an opportunity because you were scared." Marcus laughed despite himself. "She absolutely would." "So?" Emma's fingers formed the question clearly. "What are you going to do?" Marcus looked at the folder, at his sister, at the small kitchen that had been their whole world for 3 years. Then he picked up his phone and dialed the number Lieutenant Park had given him. She answered on the second ring. "Lieutenant Park." "It's Marcus Chen. I'd like to accept the general's offer." There was a smile in her voice when she responded. "I'll let her know. Report to her office Monday morning, 800 hours. And Mr. Chen, welcome aboard." The call ended. Marcus set down the phone and found Emma beaming at him, tears streaming down her face. "I'm proud of you," she signed. "I haven't done anything yet." "You did the hardest thing," she signed back. "You chose to believe you deserved something good." That weekend passed in a blur of paperwork and preparation. Marcus gave his notice to Dale, who accepted it with barely concealed relief. He packed up his locker, turned in his uniform, and said goodbye to the few co-workers who'd ever bothered to learn his name. On Sunday evening, he stood in front of his closet, trying to figure out what to wear to his first day working for a four-star general. His wardrobe was depressingly limited. Work clothes, old Army PT gear, and the khakis he'd worn to the interview. Emma wheeled up beside him. "You need new clothes." "I need a lot of things." "Start with the clothes. First impressions matter." They spent the next hour online, Emma directing him through discount sites and clearance sales until he'd ordered 3 button-down shirts, 2 pairs of dress pants, and a pair of shoes that didn't have duct tape holding them together. It was more money than Marcus had spent on himself in a year, and it felt both terrifying and necessary. Monday morning arrived with the cold clarity of autumn. Marcus woke at 5 a.m., showered, dressed in his new clothes, and stared at himself in the bathroom mirror. He looked different, not transformed, but purposeful, like someone who had a reason to be awake at dawn beyond survival. Emma was already up, making coffee with the one-handed technique she'd perfected over years. She handed him a travel mug and signed, "You've got this." "How do you know?" "Because you're my brother, and you've never failed at anything you actually tried to do." Marcus arrived at DIA headquarters at 7:30 a.m., giving himself time to get lost or face unexpected security delays. But his badge worked. The guards waved him through, and he found himself standing outside the general's office at precisely 7:58 a.m. Lieutenant Park appeared before he could knock. "Right on time. Good. The general appreciates punctuality." She led him into a smaller office adjacent to the general's main workspace. "This is yours. Computer, secure phone line, clearance documentation you'll need to review. The general wants to see you at 08:30 for a brief. Questions?" Marcus looked around the office, small but private, with a window overlooking the base. His office. "What exactly will I be doing?" "For the next 6 weeks while your clearance processes, administrative support, scheduling, correspondence, research. Think of it as an extended interview for both of you." Lieutenant Park's expression softened slightly. "The general doesn't do this lightly. She's giving you time to learn, to adjust, to decide if this life is what you want. Don't waste it." "I won't," Marcus promised. The next 6 weeks unfolded like a crash course in a world Marcus had only glimpsed from the outside. He learned the rhythms of the general's schedule, the unspoken hierarchies of military intelligence, the careful dance of information control. He sat in on meetings where he understood maybe half of what was discussed, took notes on briefings that would be classified the moment they ended, and slowly began to understand the weight General Hartwell carried every day. She was demanding but fair, expecting excellence but willing to teach. When Marcus made mistakes, and he made several, she corrected him privately with specific feedback and clear expectations. When he succeeded, she acknowledged it with a nod or a brief word of approval that felt more valuable than any paycheck. But it was the small moments that changed things. The times when the general's daughter Charlotte came to the office after school, and Marcus found himself translating between mother and daughter, smoothing conversations that might otherwise stumble. The late evenings when everyone else had gone home and the general would lean back in her chair, exhausted, and sign something casual. "Long day," or "I need coffee." And Marcus would sign back. And for a moment they were just 2 people who understood each other. One evening, 6 weeks into his provisional assignment, Marcus was reviewing a logistics report when the general emerged from her office, rubbing her temples. "Headache?" Marcus signed. She nodded. "Budget meetings, 3 hours of civilians who think intelligence work should cost less and accomplish more." Marcus smiled. Want me to get you some ibuprofen? I want you to tell me something true, she signed, surprising him. Are you happy here? Marcus set down the report. It was a question he'd been asking himself for weeks, and the answer had crystallized gradually, like frost forming on a window. Yes, he signed. More than I expected to be. The general sat down across from him, and for once, the rank between them seemed to dissolve. Good, because your clearance came through today. As of tomorrow, you're officially my aide. Full security clearance, full access, full responsibility. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. That was fast. I may have expedited the process. She smiled faintly. I wanted to make sure you were committed before I told you what comes next. What comes next? The general's expression grew serious. There's a situation developing. Foreign intelligence threat, sensitive assets at risk. I need someone I can trust absolutely in the room when decisions are made. Someone who won't leak, won't break, won't fold under pressure. She met his eyes. Someone like you. Marcus understood what she was really saying. This was the real test. Everything until now had been preparation. Now came the moment where he proved whether her faith in him was justified. When? Marcus asked. Tomorrow, 0600 hours. Secure briefing room. Wear your best poker face. That night, Marcus lay awake staring at the ceiling, his mind spinning through scenarios. This was it, the moment where invisible became visible, where Janitor became something more, where the life he'd been living collided with the life he might become. Beside him on the nightstand sat a photograph of his mother. In it, she was signing, I love you, to the camera, her face bright with the fierce pride she'd carried through every hardship. Marcus picked up the photo and studied it, looking for answers in a face that could no longer give them. But maybe that was the point. Maybe his mother had given him all the answers years ago. Show up, do your best, trust the rest. And when someone extends a hand, don't be afraid to take it. Marcus set down the photograph, closed his eyes, and finally slept. Tomorrow, he would walk into that briefing room and prove that Victoria Hartwell's faith in him wasn't misplaced. Tomorrow, he would show them all that invisible didn't mean incapable. Tomorrow, everything would change. The secure briefing room sat 3 floors below ground, accessed through 2 security checkpoints and a biometric scanner that read Marcus's palm print like it was reading his future. At 5:55 a.m., he stood outside the reinforced door, straightening his tie for the 3rd time, trying to quiet the voice in his head that insisted he didn't belong here. The door opened. Lieutenant Park gestured to him inside. The room was exactly what Marcus expected. Long table, encrypted video screens, maps covering the walls with threat assessments marked in red. What he didn't expect were the faces staring back at him. General Hartwell sat at the head of the table, flanked by 2 colonels, a Navy admiral, and 3 civilians in suits that screamed intelligence. And directly across from where Marcus would sit, Colonel Nathan Barrett watched him with undisguised hostility. Mr. Chen, the general said, her voice crisp and formal, take your seat. Marcus sat, feeling every eye on him. He placed his notepad on the table, clicked his pen once, and waited. The briefing began with a CIA analyst presenting satellite imagery of a foreign military installation. Marcus took notes, his hand moving quickly across the page. The information was dense, technical, compartmentalized. But as the analyst spoke, Marcus began to see the pattern. A defector who'd provided intelligence. An extraction operation planned for 72 hours from now. Diplomatic cover that might collapse at any moment. 20 minutes into the briefing, Colonel Barrett interrupted. General Hartwell, before we proceed further, I need to raise a security concern. His eyes fixed on Marcus. We have a provisional aide with full access, to classified operations. Someone who 6 weeks ago was cleaning floors. I think we need to seriously reconsider who's in this room." The temperature dropped. Marcus felt his chest tighten, but he kept his expression neutral, his pen steady in his hand. The general's voice came out cold as steel. "Are you questioning my judgment, Colonel?" "I'm questioning operational security, ma'am. This man has no intelligence background, no vetting beyond a fast-tracked clearance, and frankly, we know nothing about his loyalties." "We know he saved my life," the general said quietly. "We know he spent 3 years supporting his disabled sister on a poverty wage without complaint. We know he served his country honorably. What exactly are you implying?" Barrett leaned forward. "I'm implying that emotional gratitude shouldn't override security protocols. This operation is too sensitive to risk on someone unproven." Marcus set down his pen. His voice, when he spoke, was steady despite the adrenaline flooding his system. "Colonel Barrett is right." Every head turned toward him. "I am unproven," Marcus continued. "I don't have decades of intelligence experience. I don't have the credentials everyone else in this room has." He met Barrett's eyes. "But I do have something you need. I speak 4 languages fluently, including Mandarin and Russian. I can read people who aren't saying what they mean. And I understand what it means to be invisible, which means I know how to see the threats others miss." He turned to the general. "If you want me to leave, I will. But if you want me to stay, I'll prove I belong here." The room fell silent. The general studied him for a long moment, then looked at Barrett. "Colonel, Mr. Chen stays. If you have concerns about his performance, bring them to me after the operation concludes. Until then, he has my full confidence." She paused. "Are we clear?" Barrett's jaw worked, but he nodded stiffly. "Yes, ma'am." The briefing continued. As it did, Marcus noticed something he'd been trained to see in his infantry days: micro-expressions, tells, the small signs of deception. The CIA analyst presenting the extraction plan kept touching his left ear when discussing timeline. The Navy admiral's eyes flickered to Barrett every time the defector's identity was mentioned. Something was wrong. Marcus leaned forward slightly. "General, may I ask a question?" She nodded. "The extraction timeline. Why 72 hours specifically? Why not 48 or 96? The CIA analyst blinked. "That's when the diplomatic window opens." "Or," Marcus said carefully, "that's when someone else expects us to move." He looked at the general. "Ma'am, I think there's a leak." The room erupted. Barrett shot to his feet. "This is exactly what I was talking about." "He's right." The general's voice cut through the chaos. She stood, her hands pressed flat on the table. "I've had my own suspicions. Someone's been feeding information to foreign intelligence. I brought Mr. Chen into this room specifically because he's the only person here I know isn't compromised." She turned to the admiral. "Admiral Chen, I need you to contact Oni immediately. Lock down all communications related to this operation. Colonel Barrett, you're suspended from duty pending investigation. Lieutenant Park, escort him out." Barrett's face went white. "General, you can't possibly think. I think you've had unauthorized contact with foreign assets. I think you've been positioning yourself to undermine this operation from the beginning. And I think you severely underestimated the man sitting across from you." She nodded to Lieutenant Park, who stood flanked by 2 MPs who'd appeared at the door. As Barrett was led out, still protesting, the general turned back to Marcus. Her expression was unreadable. "Walk with me." They left the briefing room and climbed back up to ground level, emerging into the cold morning air of the base. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. The general walked in silence until they reached a bench overlooking the airfield. She sat down heavily, and for the first time since Marcus had known her, she looked tired. Not physically tired, but soul tired. The kind of exhaustion that came from carrying too much for too long. "I've been doing this job for 30 years, she said quietly. 30 years of proving myself, of being twice as good to get half the credit, of wondering if the people around me respected my rank or just tolerated it." She looked at Marcus. "And then a janitor saves my life and sees me more clearly in 5 minutes than colleagues I've worked with for decades." Marcus sat beside her. "You took a chance on me. That takes courage." "Or desperation." She smiled faintly. "Barrett was right about one thing. I let gratitude influence my judgment. I wanted to believe you were different because you treated me like a person instead of a rank." "I am different," Marcus said, "but not because I'm better, because I've been invisible, and invisible people learn to see what others miss." The general was quiet for a moment. Then her hands moved, signing. "Charlotte asked about you yesterday. She wanted to know if you'd come to her school and teach her class some signs." Marcus felt something warm spread through his chest. "I'd love to. She says you're the first person who signs to her like she's not broken, just different." The general's voice cracked slightly. "Thank you for that." "She's not broken," Marcus signed back. "Neither was my mother, neither are any of us. We're just people trying to be seen." The general stood, her command posture returning. "The operation moves forward tonight. Barrett's arrest will send ripples through the intelligence community. I'll need you beside me when the questions start coming." "I'll be there," Marcus promised. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the general's office as she pinned a commendation to his chest. The room was full. Lieutenant Park, Charlotte sitting in the front row grinning, Emma in her wheelchair beside her, and a dozen officers who'd learned to respect the former janitor, who'd become one of the most effective aides in military intelligence. "For exceptional service in support of a classified operation," the general read from the citation, "and for demonstrating the kind of courage that doesn't require rank or credentials, just character." When the ceremony ended and the room cleared, Charlotte ran up to Marcus and signed excitedly. "You're famous now. Everyone at school knows you work with my mom." Marcus knelt to her level. "I'm not famous, I'm just doing my job." "The best job," Charlotte signed back. Emma wheeled over, her eyes shining. "Mom would be proud." "She'd say, 'I'm just showing up,'" Marcus signed. "Exactly," Emma replied. The general approached, now in casual uniform, her daughter's hand in hers. "Dinner tonight, both of you, my place. Charlotte's been asking for weeks." Marcus looked at his sister, who nodded eagerly. "We'd love to." As they left the building together, the 4-star general, her deaf daughter, the former janitor, and his sister, Marcus realized something profound. He'd spent years being invisible, believing that was his permanent station in life. But invisibility had been preparation, not punishment. It taught him to see clearly, to act without ego, to recognize that worth had nothing to do with rank or wealth or status. The general had given him an opportunity, but he'd given her something too, proof that respect flows both ways, that strength can exist without armor, and that the people society overlooks are often the ones who see most clearly. They walked into the evening together, no longer defined by what they'd lost or the roles they'd been assigned, but by the choice they'd made to see each other as human first. And in a world that too often measured worth by titles and paychecks, that was its own quiet revolution. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.